Hello, hello, and welcome to Latinx YC, where we discuss all things related to U.S. politics from a Latino, Latina, and Latinx perspective.
Hola, Clemencia.
Hola, we're matching today.
I know.
The stripe, what is it? The stripe team.
Stripe uniform. Las rayitas. And I think
Hi everyone out there. My name is Clemencia Herrera, and I am the founder of Moira Studio, an advertising agency that works with political and advocacy campaigns that target Latinx.
And I am Cecilia del Cid, environmental and social justice practitioner, Latin American, an immigrant from Guatemala, and community weaver, also working in communications.
And part of the Stripe team today.
I know, part of this. Nos jugamos.
All right, so could you believe this? Today is the last episode of the first season of the Latinx YC podcast.
Yes.
I can't believe that we've already gone to episode 12.
I know. I'm excited.
12 episodes.
I'm proud and thank you.
When we started this podcast, I thought this was a big undertaking.
It is.
And it is. So I'm super pleased that we've been able to make it to episode 12 and that you guys are still listening and we're not just like talking to the air.
I wanted to say thank you for the ones who have been able to, for the people who has accompanied us and have given us some feedback and have listened to us through these 12 conversations.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you so much, guys. You guys are the reason why we're here.
Yes.
And so, as I mentioned in the last episode, we're going to be taking a break in July and August, and then we'll be back with season 2 in September. We're working on some very exciting guests. And
let us, during this time, let us know if there is any topics that you want us to have any suggestions for topics.
Please email or DM us on social media and let us know if you guys want us to take a deep dive into something that's, tickling your brain. So I know that some of the episodes that we talked about have talked about really heavy stuff, sometimes painful stuff and, in things that can make us angry sometimes, voter suppression, things that are happening up in DC that are really going to affect us for generations. So we wanted to sort of close this season with a positive note and see what you guys think. This is obviously our opinions and we'd love to hear what you guys think.
Yes.
Tell
me, what are we going to be talking about?
So one of the things that we've noticed in all the things that we read and all the discussions that we've had with other people is that even though, there's that whole conversation about Latinx are not monolithic. And we're not. We're very different, right? Mm-hmm. And there's a feeling in all of the Latinx in the country that, yes, there's the Caribbeans and then there's the Afro-Latino, that whole controversy that just happened within the Heights. And and then there's the Mexican Americans, and then there's the second generation Latinos, and then there's the third generation. And then, there's just all this different intersectionality going on. But at the same time, this is the main issue that I think is happening right now in people's minds. And you tell me what you think, Ceci, but sometimes this is dividing us as a whole.
I think that there is definitely a sense many times that all these labels or these groupings and social identities end up doing that. I think that there is some of those labels or groupings have been imposed on us, and some of them we have harnessed to kind of like gain communal power. So they're definitely not like either or, but both and. So I think that what you're saying is true. I think the system is designed to keep us, divided, and they use a lot of these like kind of segregating us and putting us into little groups that divide us. And the work that you and I think have been doing through this season is talking through some of why those labels are important. What do they mean about how do we embody those identities? And you and I began by identifying ourselves, how we identified ourselves. Like I always say, like I'm from Guatemala, and like whether we believed or no, where we are in the immigrant journey, like in those categories. So like just all of that to say, yes, they I think they were designed to divide us. We can together harness that language to be more significant and meaningful to us, to empower us and unite
like
us.
To develop pride, right?
Yes.
I am proud to be an immigrant. I can't be ashamed of it.
Yeah.
And people can be proud of being second generation Latinos and so on and so forth. They can be pride. There can be pride in there, but then both things can exist at the same time.
Yes.
Pride and unity can exist in the same space, right?
Yes, totally agree.
So what we're going to be talking about today, and this is like super fluffy stuff, but we love it, is what are the things that actually unite us? Because at the end of the day, the only way that we're going to have more representation in DC, we're going to have a bigger voice, and all those naysayers are going to start listening to us, is if we unite.
Yes.
There's no other way about it. We have to unite. And so that means that we also have to listen to others that are different from us, different, quote unquote, because, we are going to now sort of take a deep dive into all the things that actually make us very similar.
Yeah. I think we have talked about these in different ways through the season, but talking about what does it mean to harness political power? We are like the second largest voter bloc, and how there was a lot of, I think, surprise and commentary after the last national election about why the Latinos vote the way they did. And I don't think there's a lot of surprise. I think the thing that was most important, at least for me personally, was the amount of voters that came out and how many extra voters came out. And I think the level of organizing at the grassroots that happened to mobilize very diverse groups within our community to really demonstrate that what you're saying is true, that united we can really change and shift political ties in our direction, or to our benefit, or to the benefit of our community, or the benefit of those who experience most marginalization or have been historically put in those positions. So that's why we're having this conversation, right? Because we want to highlight the power that we can absolutely the word is harness, but just muster, put together and move forward, so that we can actually be co-creators of how our lives evolve in this country.
That's right. Yeah. So as you mentioned, marginalization, that's probably, one of the biggest things that we all have in common. I know that many Latinos have come in different situations. Some of them have come in a great situation, some of them have not. But at the end of the day, the fact that we are not well represented, there's still very much racism, colorism, etc., means that there's many different levels in which we have been marginalized. We might not feel marginalized, right? We're just I'm going to refuse to feel that way. But at the same time, we've gone through all of our processes in which we've been denied things, in which we've been set aside for different reasons, and at the individual and at the systemic level, right?
And I want to say that what you just said is really important. Like, marginalization is not something that we have done ourselves or like it's inherited, right? I grew up, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but you also grew up to a certain level when you were in Colombia as part of the dominant group. I wouldn't say the dominant class in Guatemala, because it was not part of the elite. I was definitely, my parents are very much working class Guatemalans, a teacher and a person who worked for like a sales representative for a company, but steady jobs consistently, some level of higher education, but not a bachelor's, and I think it was, we come here and suddenly you are part of a group that is considered marginalized, or for a long time the word was minoritized, being a minority, and that those numbers have changed, right? So, and also in certain areas there are Latinos, Latinas, Latinx are not a minority. They are part of the majority of voters. So
that's right.
We have reframed how we talk to things, but we don't put ourselves in that position. The dominant group puts certain other peoples in those right. spaces, right?
Yeah.
Disempower them.
Just because you don't feel that way doesn't mean that it hasn't happened, though.
Yes.
So there, like we've talked about this before, and Ceci, you're the expert in the systems of oppression. Like in some different way, in many different ways, we have been oppressed.
Yes.
And discriminated. And then I'm going to speculate here, but I feel like every single Latinx out there has some sort of a story in which they've been discriminated.
Yes.
I know I have tons myself.
and I think that is why those identities are important. When I talk about why these identities, social identities, are important, because it helps us to identify that we have spaces where we have privilege and power and are part of like the average. So for example, I am a person, one of my privileged identities, I'm a cisgender woman who is heterosexual. So, and I never have to worry, this is today's June 30th, but it's going to be next week. It's the last days of Pride Month. I never have to think about how I show up as a cisgender heterosexual woman to my workplace, right? That is not something that occupies a lot of my mind, because I have privilege in those identities. If I was a member of the LGBTQ community, that will take more space and time, and I will have to think about how I show up in the world out there.
Yeah, that's an extra layer of complexity.
Huh?
In society.
Yeah.
So in conclusion, yes, this is probably a shared experience that we all have, and many of us probably have pent up frustration, anger, and also just longing for something better. So I think that, this is definitely something that can unite us, in which we're just like, we're so fed up of it. We're done, because you know what? We contribute to this country just as much as everybody else. Mm-hmm. So we deserve the same thing as everybody else. So it's, I think that whole idea of like, we need to unite so we can all come up. It's a big concept, right?
And me, and what I think is that we're in a moment, we're in a very critical moment right now in which we can reimagine how the future happens, right? And I think when you say we can get united, I also think it's a moment in which if we show up, we can co-create. How do we see the future for our community playing out? right?
Yeah,
We are a
that's
moment and we bring together those things that I think are some of the best characteristics and qualities of our community. Like what you and I usually think, like, these are the things I love about being, Latin American, Latina, Latinx.
Yeah.
They strengthen us. They give us hope. They give us the opportunity to co-create and reimagine. It doesn't have to be the way that it has been to this point. And I think we're at a juncture in which we can really, really, if we get together, be very active and present in how this plays out for our communities.
That's right. And talking about the things that I love about being Latin American is, when we were preparing for this episode, we were talking about, what really would bring some pride in being a Latin America. And I really think this solidarity that we have. I mean, I have tons of stories from my family and friends in which, like, there's this cousin, the fourth cousin twice removed, that is sick and they are in the hospital and they're alone, and then like the whole family goes, even if they've never met this person, but they're gonna go and they're gonna see if they're okay, and once they get out of the hospital, they're gonna give them a home, and they're gonna take care of them and feed them. I mean, I know for a fact that that's a story that comes from my own family. And then, there's also a friend calls another friend, hey, I have, my cousin or my husband or whatever is gonna be, around your city. Like, is there any way that, you can show them around? And they're like, of course, and they can stay over at my place. I'm like, not a problem. We give them the whole tour. I mean, whenever I tell my family that I'm coming over, it's like they take time off. They all like, they're like, don't rent a car. I'm going to take you everywhere. It's just like, there's this sentiment of like, I want to help you because it makes me feel better if you feel comfortable. And if it makes me feel good that you're eating good food. And there's a saying in Spanish, like there's, donde comen tres, comen cuatro, ¿cómo?
Sí, se le echan agua a los frijoles. You can always put more water in the beans.
There's always room for one more or two more or four more, and it's like there's that sentiment of helping each other, and I see it so much back home, and I feel that coming in to this country makes us hard sometimes because we go through difficult experiences. We go through very cold shoulders, from cold shoulder to cold shoulder to cold shoulder. So that means that we become cold as well. And that's something that I've, in my own discovery of my Latinidad, back to my Latinidad, that's something that I have really been discovering, that it's like, I am really a nurturing person, and I love being like welcoming and giving hospitality to people. But before it wasn't so, because I have been so I have gone through a very difficult experience that had hardened me, and I feel like this is probably not my own experience, and there's so many Latinos out there that just really want to also give other people help and homes, or like bring them over for food or whatever, and they might be afraid, or they might be, I don't know. What do you think, Ceci?
I think that what you're describing is absolutely true. I think that the immigration process, and I want to make a distinction. Like I know I immigrated, but I know there are people who are coming as refugees, and so there's very different experiences to have to like flee and fight for your livelihood, and like what it means to make a choice. But I think both experiences can be hardening, right? You begin to like toughen up that shell and creating kind of like a armadura. How do you call that? Like a shell.
Armor.
Yeah, like an armor.
A shell.
So, and I think that I always think like that's how the system is designed, right? To isolate you, to separate you, to make you feel like it's one man for its own. In particular, this culture, there is a lot of this messaging about meritocracy, about like pull yourself by your own bootstraps, like you have to demonstrate that you have the grit, the resilience, that you have hard work, that you have a struggle, and like all this language that makes you feel like I can ask for help. And I think when we come from countries where we don't have a lot of systemic like safety networks, like like state safety kind of thing. So family and extended family and friends are the people who help you. So that's what our culture, we know that there are certain failures in our states. That's a whole other issue. I don't want to excuse it. But those failures have kind of like cemented, and like I think culturally too, like from ancestral cultures, right? The way in which our the people from Latin America, originals peoples, kind of like share and see themselves in relationship to resources. So I do think that those things are really important. I think that is how the community responded to the COVID-19 crisis. I think that we recognize that we were frontline workers and that we needed to provide for one another. I mean, I know that a lot of the donations that I did were directed to organizations that were going to serve community members that were going to receive assistance through the bailouts. So, I think some of us, we really have for a long time been thinking about how do we take care of those who are most vulnerable. And that's what I think is such a strength for us, because it's already ingrained. We don't have to like teach it or like
that's right.
I don't know, like
we just have to discover it again.
We have it.
We just have to discover it again. We just gotta like backtrack and go back into our our origins, our roots, and discover it again, and love that again, because like that in a way here. For some reason, we learned that was weakness. That was a side of weakness, and it's actually not. And like as you said, it is designed so we don't help each other. It is designed so we stay apart, and we don't unite. So like if we discover this solidarity back again, we're unstoppable.
And I think that, as you know, if we think that one simple issue or one disagreement, or when I see someone's difference as being an impediment for me to help, like, you're a member of the LGBTQ community, so I cannot support you or help you or love you because whatever, reasons that are religious or political or many, cultural, that prevents us. Sometimes you've been helping people who are members of the LGBTQ community that haven't disclosed to you, and just because you don't know, then you see the humanity. So it's very what divides us is very thin. It's very fragile. We can actually overcome it so much more. I think having these conversations like you and I are having is really important, because we can highlight that there are moments when we have privilege. There are moments when we don't have privilege. And what is important is when we have that privilege, how are we going to use it to support those in our community who are most vulnerable at that time? How are we going to vote to make sure that happens?
Yeah, because otherwise the circle of marginalization continues. It's like people who are marginalize others that are under them, and it's like, and that just makes zero sense to me, because if you know what it is to be marginalized or oppressed because of who you are, why would you marginalize someone else because of who they are? Because like you're doing to them what they've done to you. And like whenever we start realizing that is when we break that cycle, and then we're able to actually say, hey, I'm actually going to help that person. Maybe I don't agree with what they think or the way they live, but at the same time, I understand how they've been oppressed. And
Yes.
I've been oppressed as well for different reasons. So I don't want to do the same thing to them.
And I think as with something that you always make me think is like, how do we continue to center each other's humanities, right? I think that a lot of the language that we use and a lot of the language that is used in politics sometimes is really dehumanizing, right? Like it makes the other side or someone who opposes you to really uses language that is, you know, really undignified. And we have to think about everyone who does not share some of our identities as equally human and equally entitled to respect, I think, and to the respect of their humanity. And like something that is really is a work for me, because there are people that I really, really do not like, and certain political views that I really, really do not like, obviously. And this is something that I try to like remain truthful. I am aspiring to be a better person. Like, you know, this is a work in progress. I'm not saying here
We're
like
all a work in progress.
I've done this, right? But it's just how do we continue to humanize the person who shares other characteristics that are not what I share, or other identities? How do we continue to like
That's right.
embrace them, include them? How do we continue to take their ideas into account? How do we continue to have conversations that brings us closer together? And that's how you build a lot of power. And I think that is what so many of the policies that we talk about in the last episode are happening, because there is fear, true fear, about what happens if all these blocks that for so long have been, you know, in their own little silos, fighting for their own like particular issues, suddenly find out that
rat race.
I am going to support the other ones, and I know they're going to support me on my issue, and suddenly it's not just me fighting for, you know, justice in this category.
Yeah.
It's this group and this group and this group, and all of us at the base are fighting for justice. And you know what happens is all of us get to like lift up.
That's right, because in the episode that we were talking about the redistricting thing, for example, it's not going on in every single state, but there are some states that are like in court, you know, suing. And it's like, if the Latinos in Texas, you know, are having a lawsuit because they don't think it's fair, Latinos in Florida can support them, and they can protest for them too. And they can also, you know, when presidential election comes along, you know, put pressure on them to change things. And so it's like, you know, really listening to the needs of everyone, it's really going to pay off, because it doesn't mean that we're just like, I just want to care about my city and my state, because at the end of the day, we are the United States, and I know that there are like, you know, there's federal versus local laws, but at this federal law, there's many things that are systemic that are affecting all of us together. Yeah. And as long as we keep separate and also not caring about what, you know, what's going on with others, then they've won. The system has won. And we're trying to break the system from the inside.
And I think we're also trying to, you know, and I appreciate this, you know, from you and for you. Like, you bring me a lot of like, you provide me a lot of space to be hopeful, which sometimes, you know, I think as someone who thinks a lot about how the system is designed to oppress or to harm or to so I'm kind of like trained to like find and nitpick at these things. You usually have a very like, but there's more things that unite us, and like it's important to see how the system has retrained how we think, how we act, how we interact with one another. But I appreciate you always looking for that. What do I have in common with the next person? How can I relate to the lived experience of the person next to me? And I think that is, if we can just concentrate on recognizing that amongst our community members, like that's half of the battle.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, because I think that we, as a whole group, we are extremely creative. We're extremely hard worker. I mean, every single person, and we have a bad rep, but every single person, white American that I have met, whenever they tell me, they work with Latinos, they're always like, they're really hard workers.
Yeah.
It's ingrained in our nature, because we have to work 3 times as hard here, in order to be recognized. And so we are hard workers, and so it's like we have some common goals, right? We do have common goals. We don't want to be oppressed anymore. We don't want to be discriminated anymore. We also want better, climate laws, because they're affecting all of us.
Yes.
And they're affecting the most marginalized people too.
Yeah.
And so it's like, we want the same things.
Yes.
We want better wages. We want to get back to work. We want our families to be taken care of. We want healthcare. So we want the same things. There's really not difference in what we want.
Absolutely. And I think specifically for this country, once again, like those ideas that that poor people are poor because they're lazy. I don't know a poor person who does not work a ton because you have to.
I agree.
Or you are one paycheck away from being on the street. So for most of us, that is not an option. And for those who have encountered that, we need to find ways to offer community solidarity, like economic solidarity. Like, there is lots of organizations who are reinventing, rethinking how the new economy is going to be a community economy. How are we going to stop centering corporation, the individual, the capitalist owner, and begin to actually harness all those resources so that all of us can live a dignified life. Yes, we are extremely creative. We call it malicia criolla, I think, sometimes, but it's not malice. I think it's just that. It's like a spark. It's like creatividad criolla.
Creatividad criolla.
You see a mom, like, kids, like I always see my mother when my nephews break toys, and he'll be like, it's broken. Next morning she's taking out the glue, like the gun with the thing that was, she's patching holes, she's taping things. The toy is back on the shelf. Like, we do amazing things to make sure that the resources we do have continue to provide us joy and service, and that we can do with very little to the best that we can. So absolutely, we have every single tool in our toolbox necessary to succeed, and we just have to develop the awareness and the critical thinking of thinking, why is the interest, who benefits from us being apart? Because if it's not my community who is benefiting from the separation, someone else is. And we should be suspicious of that. I think.
And that could be something else that we have in common. There's a common opposition out there that's keeping us from getting all the things we want. And really, we each other are not the enemy.
No.
We each other are not the enemy. Please, out there, listen. We are not the enemy.
And you know what it is also? I think other communities of color are not the ones doing this. So there's a force that divides us within our group because there is so many differences, and there is pressure to divide us with other groups in the country who share some marginalized spaces. So this is not a pie in which if they get their slice, then I get less slice. That's not how it works.
There's enough for everyone.
There is, except
breaking news.
Yeah, there is enough for everyone in money, which is a social construct and made up thing. There is not enough for everyone to live a middle life, like enough resources, physical resources for everyone to live a high carbon lifestyle. I'm just gonna say, because like I want people to be aware of that as well.
Yeah, no, that's a different story.
Yeah, but there is enough resources.
That in terms of economics,
yes,
there's enough to go around for everyone.
Absolutely.
And so yeah, I hope that this was hopeful for everyone out there. As people are going out, maybe hopefully everyone gets some break for the summer. Hope everybody gets to enjoy some sunshine out there wherever you are, and
or to stay cool inside if it's too hot.
Stay cool inside if you have air conditioning. Yes,
somewhere when it's too hot.
Yeah, so we will be back in September. It's been an absolute pleasure and joy to be here with Ceci and do this.
Yes.
This is a work of love. We're not getting they're not getting anything out of this but just the satisfaction of talking about this very important topics and having you guys share your thoughts with us. And thank you so much.
Yes, and please, if anything, let us really know what are some of the issues that you find most confusing. What are some of the issues you would really would like to learn? What are some of the issues you would like us to like go back if there is anything that didn't make sense? And let us some recommendations. Share with your friends. We really want to hear from all of you. It would be wonderful.
Please share this with your friends.
To have some time to hear some comments in these couple of weeks.
If you think that you have something in common with others, just share this with other people. We're trying to build a movement, guys. So, yes. Contact me, Clem at latinxyzpod.com. We also have Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok.
Please follow us.
Pod. The TikToks are hilarious according to Ceci.
Trickle down economics doesn't work.
Trickle down economics, it doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
The trickle down economics, it doesn't work. All right, Ceci, thank you so much for coming on this journey with me. It's been an amazing 12 weeks with you, and I am very much looking forward to all the stuff that we have coming up.
Yes, and I'll be seeing you soon. Be good. Take care of yourself. Stay cold.
Besito.
Stay cool.